threats against classmates before today's shooting. But as in other recent school shootings, were signals sent out by the troubled kids ignored until it was too late? What if you're the parent of a troubled child sending out signals of his or her own? How would you know where to turn for help? Here's Mike Taibbi.
It was like a stick of dynamite that somebody was standing off to the side with a match and kept lighting the fuse.
Betty Neal is talking about her son Tommy, 9 years old then, and with a 200-watt smile masking a powder keg temper.
I was destructive, you know. Just like if I got, like, ticked, I'd, like, throw a glass or something, you know.
Every time Tommy blew up, I didn't know if I'd have a house standing when he got through.
Fits of anger and threats of violence were destroying the family.
If I had a vase that was old, that was sitting on the table, it was nothing to just pick it up and throw it at me. Pick up his cat and sling him around. Poor cat.
Tommy began collecting weapons. His mother was beside herself with worry, for now Tommy's outbursts were not happening just at home. She'd get a frantic call from Tommy's school, too.
And telling me I needed to get to the school immediately. And walking in and finding a teacher's aide sitting the straddle of my son's back. He's screaming, "Get her off of me." She's saying he can't control him.
There were suicide threats.
Oh, he didn't just make the threat. He would actually grab the knife and put it to his throat.
Did you think he was capable of suicide?
Yes.
And threats of murder.
What did you hear Tommy say that frightened you?
You just wait till you go to sleep. You might be bigger than me, but you wait till you go to sleep, and I'll get you. I'll stab you, or I'll set you on, I'll burn you. I have to burn the house down to get you. And that used to scare me to death, because I never knew.
When he was 9, Tommy was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and started in a special school for problem kids. But despite years of counseling, the uncontrollable raging continued, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day.
Were his expressions of anger serious expressions of anger?
Yes.
Were they violent?
Yes.
Were they chronic?
Yes.
He fits the profile of somebody who's heading...
Went straight down the road for a mass murderer.
In the past, a boy like Tommy would probably have been taken out of the home and ultimately might have been jailed or hospitalized or given some form of tough love treatment. But Tommy and his mom were lucky. In their South Carolina town, there was a new way to deal with a crisis like theirs. It's called multi-systemic therapy, or MST, a fancy name for a program that keeps the at-risk kid in the home and aims intensive therapy and understanding and compassion, not just at him, but at his peers, his teachers, and especially his parents.
Here was a mother who knew that her son was having some very serious problems.
Sociology professor Del Elliott runs the Center for the Study of Prevention of Violence at the University of Colorado and has conducted a nationwide study of programs like MST.
10 years ago, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. 10 years ago, the research community was saying, there isn't anything we can demonstrate works. We've had a major breakthrough in the last 4 or 5 years.
Here's how MST works. The therapist assigned to a case like Tommy's spends an average of 4 months, including about 60 hours of direct contact with him and with the people who most influence his life. Tommy needed to understand the possible reasons for his rage, learning he was adopted, having an absent father, hating his older sister, and he had to find ways to control his anger.
I wanted them to at least help me to learn how to deal with him, to help him get rid of the anger, help him to stop feeling like he was lost.
Therapy for Betty meant learning how to discipline Tommy and how to manage the stresses and conflicts in her own life.
And he had to get me back together before we could get Tommy together.
But 4 months, 60 hours, would it work? Elliott says the best way to head off an explosion with terrible consequences is to get one of these prevention programs in place early.
They're not guaranteed to work in 100% of the cases. I'd go to Las Vegas anytime with the kind of odds that these programs give me.
And they're certainly not free.
And they're not free. But you're either going to pay me now or you're going to pay me later.
And what about Tommy Neal? He's in a normal high school, an eager member of the ROTC. He continues his therapy and he's got his anger under control. and he has no interest in looking back.
Things were tough then, right?
That was then, this is now, you know. Let it be forgotten.
And what about Tommy's mother, Betty? She cannot forget the way things were, or the way Tommy and she were given the tools to escape all but certain disaster and shape a new life, a real one.
Where you used to think that he wasn't far from being the bad seed, you think that now he's not that at all. He's a good kid.
I would stake my life on Tommy right now. Parents don't want to admit, cliche, my son or my daughter needs professional help.
And protects him and maybe protects others too.
That's right. Because I want to save my son's life. And who knows, in the process, I might be saving someone else's.
Joining me now from Philadelphia's clinical psychologist, Linda Welsh. Linda, tomorrow a lot of school administrators and parents are going to be looking for trouble signs in their own schools or within their own families. What should they be looking for after Littleton?
Well, I think you look for kids who are withdrawn, depressed, anxious, having difficulty sleeping, just seemed agitated. So it really runs the spectrum. And often we just write that off as adolescence, but in a situation like this, we have to look at more critical causes.
Have we had enough of a national dialogue about these dysfunctional children in your judgment?
Not at all. I mean, clearly the families that I see are feeling helpless and hopeless and have no place to go for help, support, education. As Tommy's mother said, if she had only learned the tools and given the skills, and when she did, she was able to deal with such a difficult situation. But normally it's not available.
Where would you turn if you were in a city, say in the Midwest, and you were worried about all of this?
Well, the first thing I would do is call the local hospital and ask for psychiatric or psychological services, but too often there's waiting lists and there's dead ends. So I think groundswell community support is the place to go. Town meetings, authorities through the school situation, anybody who can organize a group and get some action.
Linda Welsh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Were there any warning signs in advance of today's attack? We turn now to investigative reporter and anchor Ward Lucas from our Denver affiliate, KUSA. Ward, what do we know about these suspects?
Well, we're learning more and more, obviously, as the minutes and hours go by. But one thing I see that amuses me almost is a wire service dispatch that says authorities and school district officials said they had never heard of the group. I personally talked to a couple of teachers today who knew all about the trench coat mafia. Students were very familiar with the trench coat mafia. We ran the AOL profile on the one chief suspect, this Eric Harris, and the last line, a personal quote, says, "Shut up and shoot it. Quit whining. It's just a flesh wound. Kill them all." These certainly are warning signs that something's wrong in a couple of troubled minds.
Ward Lucas, thank you very much. We'll have the latest from Littleton from the scene when we return. I'll be right back. We still don't know much about the killers who opened fire at Colorado's Columbine High today, but one thing we do know is that they were heavily armed. So where did they get their guns? How can we keep guns out of the hands of children? The woman you're about to meet has a plan. She wants gun owners to be held responsible for crimes committed with their weapons. Last year, Congress killed the bill that she was lobbying for. This year, she's back again, and her crusade is very personal. Here's Sarah James.
To every gun owner in America, I want to say, please, please, for the sake of the children, lock up your guns. Don't let your gun become an instrument of murder.
Suzanne Wilson is a new recruit in the campaign for juvenile gun control. There she was standing beside the president, and then on Capitol Hill, members of Congress telling anyone who would listen that something has to be done to keep guns out of children's hands.
It's okay to own guns. It's okay to have as many as you want. But if you're going to own guns, then you need to accept the responsibility for the guns.
Wilson enlisted in the crusade for juvenile gun control when her 11-year-old daughter, Brittany, and 4 other people were gunned down in the schoolyard in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
She should have never had to die this way because some man had the right to own as many guns as he wanted and store them any way he chose.
The boys who committed the murders had broken into a grandfather's home and taken the unsecured guns from inside.
In all the school shootings and all the children that die with guns, there are several issues that come into play. But the one constant in all of these is that these children had access to a gun.
Carolyn McCarthy is determined to ease Suzanne Wilson's pain, a pain McCarthy knows all too well.
Gunfire on a commuter line. Dozens of people are shot by a lone gunman.
5 years ago, McCarthy's husband was killed and her son seriously wounded when a gunman opened fire aboard the Long Island Railroad. In Congress, McCarthy is the primary sponsor of the Children's Gun Violence Prevention Act. What to you is the most important aspect of it?
Taking the responsibility of the adults and the parents with the guns in the homes.
This is only going to stop certain kinds of cases, not all of them. What does it do about guns that are stolen?
We can't stop everyone that's bent on trying to steal a gun and do something like that. It's not a perfect bill.
What's the worst that could happen with a firearm? You could kill someone. You could be killed.
McCarthy's bill would develop educational programs that go beyond hunter safety to teach about gun violence. It also requires new guns to be sold with trigger locks so that even if a child got the weapon, it would be difficult to use it without the key. Still, the heart of the bill is adult responsibility. McCarthy says she's not asking for disarmament, just common sense. To you, it seems like a completely logical idea.
Yes.
And yet this bill is languishing.
Yes.
Why?
Well, unfortunately, we have an extremely strong gun lobby that don't want any kind of restrictions.
Oh!
But it's not just lobbyists who oppose the bill. Jim Senti is a successful Midwestern businessman and lifelong gun enthusiast who taught his children to shoot. Should you be held accountable if somebody uses one of your firearms and kills someone else with it?
Even if I lent a gun to some person that I thought was responsible, if they use it in committing a crime, I don't think I should go to jail.
But what's wrong with saying you've got the right to own a gun, but it's mandatory for you to have the responsibility to keep it locked up safely?
I don't know how safe is going to be safe enough, and I certainly don't want to go to jail for not being safe enough.
And Senti wonders if complying with the law would require buying a gun vault like this one, which costs $2,000. If, though, you're keeping a pistol in your house in addition to rifles, is that all the more reason why perhaps they should be kept under lock and key?
If I have a pistol under lock and key somewhere in my house and I wanted to keep it because I was concerned that things were going on where my life might be endangered by some criminal coming into the house, having it under lock and key won't do me any good at that point.
But would the legislation make a difference? Since 1989, 16 states have passed gun owner liability laws, but only 3 made violation a felony. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, the laws have had a significant impact on accidental shootings by children, but not homicides.
We need certain controls that are reasonable and well thought out and well planned, but I'm not so sure this piece of legislation is one of those.
But Suzanne Wilson won't surrender.
I feel like that whatever I can do to stop the senseless dying of children by accidental shootings or intentional shootings, I want to do that. I just want to prevent this type of heartache.
Colorado, where today's shooting occurred, is one of the 34 states that does not have a Child Access Prevention Law, or CAP law as it's now called, on the books. Joining us once again this evening is NBC's Dan Abrams in Littleton, Colorado, just outside Columbine High. Dan, what's the latest on the investigation there?
Well, Tom, I can tell you that right behind me, literally as you were asking me that question, we just heard a couple of what sounded like very small sort of explosions. That doesn't mean anything except that they might be detonating some sort of device. But I can tell you we just heard 2 pops right behind me as you asked me that question. Now, the latest update we got was that the investigators had initially gone in. They had said, you know what, we don't want to continue until the bomb squad and the SWAT team does one more search of the building. We'd initially been told that the investigation had begun. The investigators, we are told by the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, arrived and decided it would be more appropriate for the SWAT team and the bomb squad to do one more search before the investigation began. And that is supposedly what happened But again, as I say, I just heard behind me a couple of small pops, which may have been the bomb squad in action. Tom?
Dan, briefly, there's been some confusion about the number of suspects. We know that 2 likely suspects are dead, but they were searching still for a third one or not?
It's possible. They say that is not out of the question. They say they have 2 confirmed suspects and confirmed that both of them are dead. That does not conclude the investigation, however. Again, because the investigators, so to speak, have not been able to truly get in there and begin their work. They don't want to say that it's not possible there's another suspect at large.
Dan Abrams tonight in Littleton, Colorado, as he's been there all day from the beginning of this tragedy. Some 25 people now are believed to have been killed. That's Dateline for tonight. NBC News, of course, will have more on the killing at Columbine High tomorrow on Today. I'll be reporting from Denver tomorrow night on NBC Nightly News and on Dateline Wednesday at 8, 7 Central Time. Now stay tuned for your local news. I'm Tom Brokaw. For all of us at NBC News, good night.
Later on The Tonight Show, Jay analyzes this Billy Crystal guy, plus actress Rita Wilson and the rockin' tunes of Eagle Eye Cherry. Your local news is next.
These kids aren't going to forget this for a long time.
2 gunmen on a suicide mission commit one of the most horrible crimes in American history. Thanks for joining us. Diana has a night off. Up to 25 people, most of them students, died when 2 classmates turned a Colorado high school into a war zone. 20 others were wounded. Dozens of frantic students ran for their lives after the gunmen walked into the school and opened fire. Others who couldn't get out hid in corners or behind locked doors. The masked gunmen detonated bombs and planted explosives. Survivors say the killers belonged to an outcast high school group known as the Trenchcoat Mafia. Other students say they talked a lot about Hitler, Marilyn Manson, death, and decapitation. We have a team report of the deadly shooting spree. KARE 11's Julie Borgen talked with a crisis counselor about the emotional impact this story is having on people everywhere. But first, the latest from the scene with CNN's Mark Bernheimer.
Well, it is becoming one of those stories that is so awful, it is almost hard to believe. If it is true that 25 people were killed at the high school this morning, in addition to the 20 or so we know were injured, that would make this the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. Columbine High School students and teachers ran for cover shortly after school got started when 2 suspects, apparently students themselves, opened fire. The gunmen, or boys, sprayed bullets in all directions and also reportedly set off small explosives.
Everyone around me got shot, and I begged him for 10 minutes not to shoot me. He just put the gun in my face and started bleeding everywhere and started laughing, saying that it was all because people were mean to him last year. We saw everybody running out like 10 minutes later, so we ran out to the police cars, and there were just like a ton of kids covered in blood.
While some students locked themselves in classrooms, others made a break for it, like this wounded student who came out of a second-story window. Eventually, SWAT teams rescued dozens of others. Medical crews aided the wounded behind the school before transporting them to various hospitals. But the suspects remained inside the school. It wasn't until late in the day when SWAT team members finally secured the campus that the suspected shooters were discovered. In a library, both dead.
Well, it appears to be a suicide mission, but one, I think we've had a lot of media attention on these things around the country, and you don't know how much that plays into giving somebody else an idea to do it.
Witnesses say the shooters were members of a school gang called the Trenchcoat Mafia. They wore black coats, hats, and masks during the attack. We know that this was a group, if indeed they are members of this group, that apparently has a great deal of hatred. It's a hateful group that apparently has an internet site somewhere extolling hate for various groups. A lot of anger involved here, and indeed they were apparently targeting jocks, athletic individuals, and minorities. Now, we know very little about the suspects tonight, very little about their motives, but information will certainly continue to come in over the next couple of days. Meantime, the scene inside the school after the shooting was so gruesome that counseling had to be set up even for the paramedics who assisted the victims. Reporting live from Littleton, Colorado, I'm Mark Bernheimer. Back to you.
All right, Mark, thank you. A Twin Cities father learned tonight his son was in the high school at the time of the shooting. Tim Kalova's son, Eric, lives with his mother in the Denver area. Eric is a freshman and was in math class when the shooting started, but he did manage to escape safely.
I couldn't believe that it had happened. I had been out there and seen the school, and it was a nice neighborhood, nice area. Just like here, you wouldn't imagine it happening in White Bear or around here.
Golova talked with his son tonight. He says Eric is shaken but otherwise fine. Millions of Americans watch this tragic story unfold on live television, and the horrible images of bloodied victims and students desperately running to safety are taking an emotional toll on people everywhere. KARE 11's Julie Borgen continues our team report with more on that part of the story. Julie?
Well, Paul, this is the 7th time in less than 2 years that students have been shot by fellow classmates at school. It's that type of random violence that has some students scared and parents looking for ways to reassure them that they're safe.
They just started coming in the library and opening fire and shooting out bombs.
They're sights and sounds that none of us want to hear and no one can forget.
There was a guy at a table right next to us, next to me and her, and they just shot him and then walked away, and then he was just sitting there in a pool of blood.
A safe suburban school torn apart by gunshots and bomb blasts, all allegedly fired by fellow students.
Imagine how upsetting for kids to see this. I mean, think about that.
And family health counselor Denise Daniels says with vivid TV coverage, that's true for kids everywhere.
So we want to be sure that we talk to kids about this situation and let them know that they're okay.
I saw the man with the weapon.
She says children of all ages will likely have fears and questions about what they've seen. The key is to listen to them.
I think it's really important that we always validate a child's feelings. We shouldn't be dismissive or minimize those.
But as Bertha mentioned, you can see somebody in the
With scenes like this playing over and over, it's best to keep preschool-age kids away from the TV. With older children, let them guide you.
Find out where the child's at by saying, you know, have you heard about it? Or, you know, some kids are talking about this, what have you heard? And build on the information that they have.
And that reassures your kids that in spite of this, they are still safe.
An important thing to do is to say the reason this is on the news is because it's a very unusual event. And that way they know it's very unlikely that this is going to happen to them.
And Denise Daniels says parents should try